welcome to the 7th session in our webinar series with the Alliance for Water Efficiency. WaterSense and AWE started this series in 2015. The goal was to reach the different audiences that have a role in ensuring outdoor water efficiency, including landscape professionals, local governments, and water utilities. We've had 6 successful webinars to date, many of which highlighted how local governments and the outdoor industry are working together to reach consumers. All of our webinars have been recorded and are available for on-demand viewing, which is important given that many people are too busy during the day to carve out time for the in-person session. But before we begin, let's cover a few housekeeping topics. All attendees were muted when they entered the webinar in order to minimize background noise. To ask questions, you can type those into the chat box at the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll have a dedicated time at the end of the session to answer those. This presentation will be available on the WaterSense website and AWE's YouTube channel following the presentation. But before launching into the presentation, we'd like to hear from you with a few poll questions. So the first question is, who do we have on the call today? Local state governments, irrigation professionals, water utilities, universities or university extension services, or other? So if you could take a second to answer that question, please. Great, thank you. It looks like we have quite a few local and state governments and others as well, but it seems fairly evenly distributed. Great, we have another question for you, and that is, what part of the country are you calling from? So if you could select one, either west, southwest, midwest, southeast, northeast. Wow, we have a lot of you in the west. Great. Today's webinar is the Garden Guru's Watershed Approach to Landscaping. Our featured speakers are Julius Duncan, the Outdoor Coordinator for WaterSense. Julius recently joined the WaterSense team as the Environmental Engineer for the Outdoor Program. He has a master's degree in agricultural engineering from the University of Georgia and a bachelor's degree from Florida A&M University. We also have with us Marianne Simon, the certification coordinator with G3 Green Gardens Group. Marianne is trained as a landscape architect and became a G3 professional in 2009. In addition to being the WaterSense certification coordinator, Marianne has led an assortment of high-profile projects for G3, including 2 community partnership grants with LADWP. Last but not least, we have with us today Pamela Berstler, the Chief Executive Officer with G3 Green Garden Group. Pamela is a highly experienced landscape water management expert who co-founded and now manages G3 Green Gardens Group, an organization dedicated to using landscapes as a climate change solution. Prior to founding G3, Pamela spent nearly a decade as a California licensed landscape contractor with her award-winning and innovative residential design/build firm, Flower to the People. Before we hear from Marianne and Pamela, Julius will provide some information about WaterSense labeled professional certification programs and summarize key elements of the WaterSense program specifications. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Julius.
Thank you, Amanda. Hopefully by now you are all familiar with the WaterSense program. WaterSense is an EPA voluntary partnership program that promotes water efficiency. Our focus can really be distilled down into the 3 Ps: products, practices, and people. We label products that use less water and identify more efficient models. We encourage best management practices that reduce water use, and we engage with our partners and professionals who work with the public to make savings happen. WaterSense follows a systems approach to promote outdoor water use efficiency. Individual changes or improvements that focus on only one aspect of the outdoor system might not fully realize potential water savings. We can achieve greater efficiency by addressing multiple components of the system and practices. Throughout this webinar series, we've heard water efficiency program managers, irrigation professionals, and product manufacturers speak about many components of an efficient system. Today, I'll spend a few minutes introducing how WaterSense works with the irrigation industry's professional certification programs. As you know, many owners of irrigation systems don't have the knowledge, experience, or even time to maintain and repair their irrigation systems, or understand how to program and operate irrigation system controllers. It can be intimidating and seem complex. What's more, most don't know how much water an inefficient system wastes. That's where hiring certified irrigation professionals come into the picture. To encourage consumers to go with a certified professional, WaterSense partners with professional certifying organizations, or PCOs, and labels their professional certification programs that promote water efficiency. In 2014, EPA released the WaterSense program labeling system, which established guidelines and requirements for PCOs. It outlines the application process and ensures a base level of organizational competency among our PCO partners. PCOs that partner with EPA can apply for the WaterSense label for one or more of their certification programs. They also sign a partnership agreement with WaterSense. EPA reviews and evaluates certification programs, and those that meet the criteria of a specification earn the WaterSense label. WaterSense specifications cover certification programs in irrigation system design, installation and maintenance, and auditing. All WaterSense labeled certification programs stress water efficiency in addition to competence with irrigation systems. Our specification for programs in irrigation system design requires at least 3 years of experience and ongoing continuing education related to water efficient concepts in the field of irrigation. Exams must address several subject areas, including preparation of irrigation design reflecting site requirements, soil, water, and plant relationships, water management, such as budgeting and consumption, and all of our specifications require knowledge of recent innovations and technological developments, including WaterSense labeled technologies. Currently, the Irrigation Association's Certified Irrigation Designer is the only WaterSense labeled program for designers. Our specification for installation and maintenance requires at least 1 year of experience and a demonstrated working understanding of how to disassemble, repair, and assemble system components, plus continuing education related to water efficient concepts in the field of irrigation. These exams must also address several subject areas, including knowledge of system components, system design layout, and equipment specifications, particularly as they pertain to distribution uniformity and system efficiency, precipitation rates and irrigation scheduling, and equipment commissioning. The Irrigation Association's Certified Irrigation Contractor is the only WaterSense labeled program for installation and maintenance professionals. Finally, our specification for irrigation system auditing programs requires candidates successfully complete at least one irrigation audit, plus continuing education related to water efficient concepts in the field of irrigation. The exam must address several subject areas, including distribution uniformity, precipitation rates and irrigation scheduling, and water pressure and impact on sprinkler performance. As you see here, most WaterSense labeled programs are for system auditors. They include IA certified golf irrigation and landscape irrigation auditor programs, the California Landscape Contractors Association's Certified Water Management Program, the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership's Qualified Water Efficient Landscaper, or QUEL program, which encourages other organizations to adopt its program. To date, 18 PCOs administer the QUEL program throughout California, as well as in Utah, New Mexico, Florida, and Wyoming. Our newest, from Shasta College, will be included in our next website update. There's also Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Services Texas Certified Landscape Irrigation Auditor Program, and G3, Green Garden Group's Watershed Landscape Professional Program. We'll hear more about G3's program in just a moment. If anyone listening is interested in one of the WaterSense labeled programs, or if you are a utility that wants to encourage certification in your area, links to the programs can be found on the WaterSense website. Benefits of becoming a certified pro include use of the WaterSense promotional label and access to all promotional materials for irrigation pros. I just want to remind people that our specification for WaterSense labeled homes requires that irrigation systems be designed and installed by a pro certified through one of our labeled programs. PCOs maintain lists of everyone who earns their certifications, and WaterSense hosts a comprehensive online database of all professionals who have been certified by WaterSense labeled programs. The WaterSense directory of certified pros includes more than 2,500 irrigation professionals, including contact information for professionals who are available for hire. The directory can be searched by an individual's name, company name, or by zip code, which allows customers to find certified pros in their area. Now I'd like to turn it over to Pamela Berstler and Marianne Simon of the G3 Green Gardens Group.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Pamela Berstler. G3 was founded in 2008 around the vision that the front yard is really where most people are going to meet the global environment. And we currently have a membership of about 500 people, and all of us are committed to the idea that we can create a new economy around transforming the landscape using what's called the Watershed Approach. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But we really have this vision of utilizing training and support to create a thriving green economy that benefits the earth and everybody who cares for it. And the landscape actually becomes something more than just ornamental. It becomes a multi-benefit solution to many of our environmental challenges. Next slide. Well, as we mentioned earlier, we want to put a face to the name. I'm the person on the left. My background is actually in landscape construction, but I was also a derivative securities trader for many years, and I have a finance background. Marianne Simon is our certification coordinator, and in addition to a lengthy experience in landscape design and supervising installation, she is also has a theater background. So we come from other industries, but we have extensive experience in landscaping as well. Next. So this is the key. We're intending to turn the conventional idea of water use efficiency on its head. You know, until now, the water industry has thought about outdoor water use efficiency as being primarily about irrigation. But when you consider that we're talking about landscapes, which are greatly affected by rainfall, and also that so much of the water that goes into especially residential properties is utilized in the outdoors, in the landscape, we have to really expand the idea of water use efficiency to include rainwater use efficiency. And so it really begins to look at landscapes as being something more than just water-wise. We're really turning them into being something that is watershed-wise. So watershed, I mean, come on, you know, this is a word that we get pushback all the time from water, you know, people in the water industry and water agencies saying, you know, we don't have anything really to do with the watershed. But actually, once we explain what we mean by this, pretty much everybody gets it and they understand how it applies to landscaping. So the EPA defines a watershed as an area of land where all the water that's under it or drains off of it goes to the same place. And when you use that definition, any area of land can be described as a watershed, you know, whether it's what you immediately think of, you know, sort of the mountainous areas with the trees and the rivers and all that, or it could be used to mean your front yard, your side yard, your backyard. I mean, with this definition, even your roof could be considered a watershed and could be evaluated as a watershed. And once we embrace that definition, we find that there's already a shared understanding of what makes a watershed healthy. And this idea of the multiple benefits provided by a watershed applied to a landscape shifts us from that water-wise to watershed-wise. So I just want to do a quick review of what it means to have a healthy watershed, because it really puts into context what we're talking about with our training. A healthy watershed is evaluated on its cycling of nutrients and water through the whole system. You know, the water comes from the sky and it's captured first in a system of plants and soil, so basically landscape. And before that water moves through that system, it moves through that system into the local waterways or down through the soil profile to replenish the groundwater. And that's really the key thing about the healthy watershed, this passing through a system of plants and soil first before meeting the waterways. And then, of course, when the sun comes out, the water in the system is cycled back up into the clouds through evapotranspiration. And additionally, carbon and nitrogen are cycled through this plant and soil system. And all of this stuff works together to give the earth clean water, productive plant life, and it actually manages the effect of climate. So what we're seeing, in effect, is that landscapes are managing climate. And so using the healthy watershed model, we can see that managing water contributes to mitigating the effects of climate change and gives us healthy plant soil water systems or healthy landscapes. So now we apply the model of this healthy watershed on the large scale and we bring it down to the local level to every single landscape. And the water in every landscape, regardless of its size or regardless of how it's being used, whether it's commercial or public or residential, even that tiny little bit of land that's behind the Starbucks, all can be managed better using the watershed approach. And now we've distilled this watershed approach into 4 key principles. And these become really the standards for the watershed approach. The first is living soil that acts like a sponge to regulate water passing through the plants and soil profile. And the emphasis here is really on soil structure rather than soil type. So we're looking at the biophysical chemical processes that create soil structure. Utilizing rainwater as a resource first and foremost before any other water. And then selecting climate-appropriate plants, which are probably best described as local native plant material and other plants that have unique adaptations to a particular place. And then sort of at the end, and this is why I said we're flipping things around, irrigation needs to be highly efficient and used only when necessary. And this means a very well-designed system with equipment in good working order managed by knowledgeable professionals. So these principles become the standards that we put in place, and we work with local agencies and municipalities to incorporate these standards in their programs and outreach so that everybody's on the same page. So I think it's important to understand that the principles need to be consistent at every level. And that means that outreach, training, education, and program development all has to emanate from the same set of watershed-wise standards. Some people watching this presentation may even recognize some of the slides that we've been using from our, from the professional trainings that we do or from conference presentations, and that's because we have a consistent message. And essentially, this is really what property owners appreciate. It makes sense to them to think of their landscape as something they can manage in a more holistic way. And it helps them understand the value of such landscaping and, of course, the value of the irrigation systems and other systems that support the landscaping. And for professionals, the certification program provides them with critical thinking tools to be able to incorporate these principles into their everyday practices. For agencies and organizations, the These standards allow them to promote and create incentives for multi-benefit landscape renovations. And then we see that the watershed approach is necessary not just in the context of the principles, but also in the implementation of the programs as well. So we created this watershed-wise training in 2008 and began offering it throughout mostly Southern California, but a little bit in Northern, to professionals who were interested in understanding how water use efficiency extended beyond irrigation efficiency. And many of our early adopters recognized that they needed the tools to evaluate soil, plants, irrigation systems, and rainwater capture opportunities on every single landscape. And this program gave them that foundation. So as California entered its third and fourth year of drought, we knew that we needed to ramp up the acceptance of the program so that the property owners, who we were meeting through our homeowner trainings, had reliable professional help to evaluate and convert their conventional landscapes into more resilient watershed-wise landscapes. Next. So in 2015, we were able to become a WaterSense professional certifying organization. We started by recruiting a 20-person independent oversight committee that drew subject matter experts from the landscape world, water agencies, irrigation, and then we added in stormwater management. And the 16 hours of training required to sit for the examination includes all the criteria required for an irrigation system auditor, including the catch can tests, calculating distribution uniformity, and solving for total irrigation runtime. Then we also include the calculations for passive rainwater capture into healthy living soil and adapt the training to the particular climate. Certified professionals have to pass an examination and then finally provide a practicum of a whole site evaluation, which includes a visual irrigation review. They have to maintain CEUs on an annual basis after their initial 24-month grace period. And all irrigation and rainwater capture calculations are viewed through this healthy soil lens. And the reason for this is that we now understand that plants and soil are able to absorb huge amounts of carbon from the atmosphere only because a vastly complex microbial biome actually engineers the soil to do so. And we understand that the carbon sequestration that occurs in soil is critical in the management of water, both in the soil and in the atmosphere. So really, soil is the key technology for healthy landscapes and for good irrigation practices. Maintaining an optimal balance of oxygen and water in the soil is essential to good irrigation. We all know that. And it's also fundamental to promoting the right kind of microbial life that will sequester the carbon and build the health of the soil. So putting irrigation into this context makes sense to people more so than just having irrigation as a separate system that isn't part of a whole. And it takes the guesswork out of irrigating efficiently. These are the jokes, folks. Okay, so the watershed approach to landscaping creates opportunities for irrigation system auditors even in situations where irrigation may not be the topmost priority. Of course, it makes sense in a dry climate and in drought conditions, but the same principles are relevant whether you're dealing with flooding, water quality, or a host of other environmental challenges. And this approach turns irrigation system auditors into multi-benefit managers. And that's why we're able to attract a wider range of participants to our training programs. Because it is holistic, it appeals to irrigation professionals, landscape designers and architects, contractors, nonprofits, permaculture enthusiasts, water quality folks, and even highly motivated property owners and managers. And our certification also is uniquely accessible for workforce development, such as with conservation corps and other youth job corps, because it provides this problem-solving skill and the foundational training necessary for moving on to a higher level issue like rainwater systems design or irrigation systems design or irrigation systems maintenance. And we're working hard to keep this community engaged after their certifications by inviting them into our membership area called the Soil Party. But we recognize that there is a gap between training and actually putting people to work. So we decided to create some new kinds of jobs to help people use their Watershed-Wise Landscape Professional certification. Now I'm going to turn it over to Marianne now to speak about how we have leveraged our certification to put folks to work through the program we call the Garden Guru program. Marianne?
All right. So the Garden Guru program came into being as the result of several factors. Due to the severe drought in California, our state model landscape ordinance was expanded beyond just plant selection and proper irrigation to now promoting soil health and encouraging rainwater capture. All across the state, water agencies and municipalities were implementing these grass to garden programs, but the results were not consistent. And so even though our new gardens were saving water, you would call them water-wise, they weren't always better for the environment as a whole, which we would call watershed-wise. And finally, the messaging around irrigation alone didn't make sense to property owners. The water savings had to be framed in a greater context of actually creating a garden. And property owners needed help figuring out how to actually make that happen. Up to this point, the program has focused primarily on residential properties, but including commercial or public spaces could easily be accomplished. So how does it work? All of our gurus are Watershed-Wise Landscape Professional certified. They provide one-on-one consultations and they actually go out to the site. A property owner fills out an online form that requests the services of the Garden Guru. And so right from the get-go, we are gathering data about the property and the irrigation system they have on hand. The guru then begins gathering data about the site prior to a visit from online sources and information provided by the property owner. And then once he's on site, or she's on site, the guru follows a standard checklist to walk through the appointment. In this way, visual irrigation audits are turned into whole site evaluations, and they look at all the components that affect water application on a healthy, functioning landscape. The guru then proposes a first step action plan that includes the property owner's objectives and provides them with local resources. And finally, the information that the guru has been gathering is compiled into a standardized report and submitted along with photographs that document the visit. This standardized reporting is very important because it now provides G3 and its water agency or other partners with information that can be analyzed in the future. So in 2014, we launched a pilot program as part of a community partnership that was funded by the LADWP and was supported by multiple nonprofits, including a youth workforce development group. The program was then followed up by a program with the City of Beverly Hills and most recently throughout the County of San Diego. These three programs emphasized residential properties and were grant funded. So we were able to offer property owners free or subsidized appointments, for example, $50 in Beverly Hills. And because our infrastructure was being paid for by these contract programs, we were also able to offer guru appointments in nearby communities that were outside the grant boundaries, as well as full pay prices. And as a bonus, we also offered extensions on the guru appointments so that a property owner could easily add hours to their site visits if they so desired. And we'll talk about the funding in just a little bit. So we thought that sharing the details of the San Diego program would be interesting. We just kept getting better with each one. In this project, we were contracted to a nonprofit, the Surfrider Foundation, and the San Diego County Watershed Protection Program, which is actually a water quality agency. These two were in partnership with water agencies and the City of San Diego to roll out a series of programs aimed at facilitating this grass-to-garden transformation throughout the county. G3 created the guidelines that you can see here by synthesizing 12 water quality and water supply related guidance documents. In addition to that, we provided property owner outreach and classes and conducted 2 professional certification classes. The Guru program provided the technical assistance to bridge the gap between what the property owners were learning in class and the financial incentives program for the grass-to-garden being offered. The 160 appointments were free to the property owners. Each session included a 90-minute on-site meeting with a 30-minute prep time window. Each guru used the same checklist, submitted photos, and documented their meetings using a standardized report. Items that they were looking at included assessment of the presence and quality of irrigation systems, location of downspouts and gutters, existing plant material and the quality of it, soil quality, and design parameters such as impervious surfaces and things like hillsides. Recommendations then included plant ideas, downspout redirect, irrigation repairs or drip retrofits, irrigation controller scheduling, and methods for removing grass without utilizing chemicals. All of these topics are addressed in the guidelines and were within the competency of the certified professionals. Email and phone follow-up with the property owners allowed us to get feedback on the Guru's performance and on the progress they were making in the conversion process. Finally, after all of that, the data gets put together in a final report for the partners and the funders. Participants in the program began to receive email and phone call follow-ups to determine whether or not they had moved forward on any of the recommendations, and if not, what was holding them back. And while we did determine that there were 129 irrigation systems that could be made more efficient or converted to drip, we also learned that as much as 144,000 gallons of water could be captured on these properties with every inch of rain. So the Gurus were having an impact on multiple benefits, not just irrigation system performance. This is a program where everybody wins. The property owners got access to professional consultations with a minimal investment. They received sound advice on how to prioritize their objectives and how to move forward on the next steps. Our professionals got hands-on experience in assessing and working with these landscapes using this new paradigm. And for many, these appointments translated into additional work, whether it was coaching, designing, installing, or maintaining the landscapes of property owners who had first experienced them as gurus. And of course, it plugged them into the greater WaterSense program and their like-minded cohorts. And for the agencies, they learned how to develop a consistent message, how to create incentives for multiple benefits, and then they became the beneficiaries of this whole site data that was being gathered. So some of the lessons learned seem obvious now. It is always more challenging and costly than you expect to administer a new program and to maintain the high quality control at all levels of engagement. And we list some of the many lessons that we learned. And being a guru is not for every professional, but for those that have the confidence to work with property owners and want to build their businesses and make themselves relevant in a changing market, it can provide a new way for entering a market or growing a business that focuses on multi-benefit landscapes.
So this is Pamela again, and they always boot me to the front of the room when it comes down to talking about money, so here I am. But we thought it would make sense to give you a little bit of information about pricing. To date, our programs have fallen within the $150 to $175 per hour range, and that's sort of all in for managing the program and also providing the guru work. And this is really comparable to, in California anyway, to the going rates for professionals who are doing landscape consultation, whether it's design related or irrigation and installation related. So next, please. And really, you know, all of this is about thinking ahead instead of looking behind. Landscapes and the systems that control them are becoming much more sophisticated, and the professionals demonstrating problem-solving skills are going to be a lot more valued. And in the not-too-distant future, you know, we imagine garden gurus working with property owners and other landscape professionals to implement Wi-Fi enhanced irrigation controllers and rainwater harvesting reuse systems that are helping with flood control. And all of these sort of digital and highly technological systems are based, you know, fundamentally on problem-solving skills in the landscape and understanding the watershed approach. Next, please. So here's some information for reaching us, and I'll turn it back over to the folks at EPA.
Thank you, Marianne and Pamela. We appreciate you taking the time to give the details on the Green Garden Group's watershed approach to landscaping. Everyone, please take a moment to write in your questions in the chat box. As you're taking time to write in your questions, we'd like to put up a few quick poll questions.
Great, yep, so we have another question. If all of you would be able to take a second to answer that. And the question is, are you seeing a trend of irrigation systems moving away from the typical sprinkler system to drip irrigation? Either yes or no. Okay, it looks like the majority of you are. That's good. Now we have another question for you. Are you seeing a shift in consumer preference for weather-based irrigation controllers over clock timer controllers? Okay, that's about equal, yes and no. Okay, and so for those of you who answered no, have consumers indicated why? Is it too expensive? Are controllers too complicated? Are they unaware of the product? And again, if you'd like to use this time, you can type in your questions into the chat box. So it looks like a lot of people are unaware of the product and find controllers too complicated. Okay, thank you. So we have some questions that have come in already. Pamela and Marianne, a lot of those are for you. So I'm just going to start reading them, and if you don't mind addressing them to the best of your ability. So here's a question. Are you aware of this type of program, if it will be offered in Northern California or in Oregon? So a program similar to yours?
So this is Pamela speaking. Our program is actually now available nationwide through a licensing agreement, very similarly to how the Irrigation Association operates. And we've already begun offering it in Northern California, building the coalition, if you will, to offer the training and then also build the job work like Garden Gurus. But we know that there are a couple of water agencies in Northern California that already are doing similar kinds of things. The difference may be that one, it may or may not be conforming to a standard for the watershed approach, and two, when the people who are actually doing the appointments may or may not be having to gather the information and report back on a sort of standardized information gathering, protocol. And so those two things make it slightly different. But we do know that other water agencies are offering it, and we are certainly in a position now to begin to offer it pretty much anywhere.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question. How much was the cost to deliver the Guru program in San Diego? And what kind of budget is needed to pay for Gurus and keep the program at low cost for property owners?
So that's a great question. San Diego ran about $340 a visit. So there were, I think, 160 visits, and those visits, as Marianne detailed, were 90 minutes on site and 30 minutes preparation. So that range of about $300 to $350 a visit is pretty much where we're seeing it come in, and the reason that it's more expensive than just sending someone out to talk about whatever is because everyone is trained, everyone is required to follow, the particular protocols and gather the data and then process the data. So that adds to things.
We also had a dedicated coordinator, and she ran interface between the gurus, the homeowners, the central office here. So some of that was also used to cover her expenses.
Yeah, it's critical to have. Yeah, and by the way, I think almost every program, if you take staff time into consideration, is going to fall into the range that I showed on a couple slides ago.
Yeah, and we had a clarifying question. So the garden gurus are compensated. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Actually, we think that's a critical difference between programs that are offered with master gardeners and other volunteers. I love those programs. That's really terrific, but we're not building an economy with those. And so our dedication is to creating an economy around these, around these practices and around this grass to garden transformation. So it's essential that the people who are going out in the field are compensated, and compensated, not below market, but where they would be compensated to do this on their own, so that they do go and do it on their own after the program's over.
Thank you. Yeah, we have another question. What was the source of your grant funding?
You're talking about the in San Diego. In San Diego, it was a state grant through the Department of Water Resources called an IRWIMP grant. It was Proposition 84 funded. So there were program partners that were put together to deliver this grass to garden. I don't remember how many acres, six and a half acres, I think, of grass to garden transformation in the county of San Diego. And so the funding actually comes through the state Department of Water Resources.
Thank you. We have a couple questions about composting. Someone said they didn't see composting as part of the overall strategy. Could you address that maybe?
Sure, absolutely. So, it wasn't stated specifically, but composting is, of course, the critical way to create organic matter that is suitable for building the soil microbial biome. So when we talk about soil being the most important part of the management of water in a landscape, we're essentially talking about building soil structure. You do that through the addition of organic matter and the reduction of disturbance, and the way you build organic matter is through compost. So it all fits together perfectly.
Is there a compost program that provides free compost to the lawn and garden applicants?
So now we're talking about San Diego specifically, or in general. In San Diego, there is a compost component which is part of the incentives program that's managed by the water agency, and so there is a access to good quality compost. Not all areas have that access, and certainly, I mean, in California there are many good compost providers, and we, of course, since soil's the most important thing, we talk a lot about compost, but outside of California the availability of that resource is, varies, and so I don't know how it would be in other places.
Okay. Are soil testing, or is soil testing part of the consultation? So in
the 3 programs that we administered or implemented, soil testing per se was not part of the program, other than identifying, soil type and looking at it with regard to management of irrigation and management of building soil structure. So when you do soil testing, now you're adding, somewhere between, $50 and $250 to the, to the visit in order to get that. And it's the higher range for doing biological testing, which is really what we're interested in. So, so no is the answer, but it would be a great thing to create incentives around so that people can understand soil structure and soil microbial activity, especially in particular areas where there are challenges.
Okay, we have another question. Do you consider your movement in line with low impact development, or do you want to distinguish it as a separate paradigm?
That's a very funny question and an awesome one. We are absolutely in line with low impact development. I mean, it's just everything that is being taught, trained, and discussed in the Garden Guru program, and really anything that we do fits into the low impact development best management practices. We just like to put a V in front of the LID. So we are very low impact development. In other words, it applies to every single landscape, not just ones that are being redeveloped or whatever would trigger a low impact development ordinance in a particular location.
We have another question about water savings. So did you measure the water savings from the 160 site visits? And do you have an approximate savings number of how much water was saved?
That's a great question. You only know water savings after you see the management of the site. So the San Diego program, in fact, almost all these programs have not had enough time to be implemented and then managed to really see what is the long-term water savings. You can do lots of calculations, and in fact all the gurus are trained to do water budgeting calculations so they can show, well, this is what the landscape is utilizing now, and when it's converted from grass to garden, this is what you are expected to be utilizing, and this is the savings that you should enjoy. But as we all know, actual savings in the landscape is completely dependent upon management of this situation. So the answer is no, we haven't measured that yet, but yes, that is part of what we want to track and we're keeping an eye on, especially because these grass to garden conversions are billed as being, 50, 60, 70% water saving programs, and many of them don't have the standards of the watershed approach. We know from experience of implementing these gardens utilizing the watershed approach, not within the context of the Garden Guru program, but outside of that, that we can enjoy even greater savings when we're harvesting rainwater in the site, passively harvesting it. So we're very much looking forward to seeing whether or not there's actually, it's not so much about how much water are we saving, but how much more water are we saving when you utilize the standards of the watershed approach.
And we have one final question here. Did the program include a check of the irrigation system and or a formal irrigation audit?
So the answer is no. Well, yes and no. Yes, it includes a check of the irrigation system. It's a visual review, so it's turned on and reviewed. It also included gathering data about the particular controller that they had and looking at the time schedule that is on the controller and giving some advice about that. We did not actually touch the controllers to reprogram them, although I think that that would be an excellent thing to add to a site visit like this. And I've seen that be very successful in other places. But it does not include a catch can test. And really the most important reason for that is, first of all, time, but also this was a residential, these are mostly residential related visits, and just by doing a visual audit, you see right away that a catch can test would be pretty much irrelevant.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you who posted questions. We had a lot of them come in. So for those of you who wrote in questions that we didn't get to today, we will be emailing you responses to those. So if you do still have a last burning question, feel free to type that into the chat box and we'll get to you via email.
Some of you may already be WaterSense partners, but we might be new to others. Our program depends on our partners to carry the message of water efficiency to consumers. These are the categories of partners that we have. Many of the utility and government organizations on the call today fall into our promotional partner category. I want to encourage you to become a WaterSense partner. After all, it's free, and we have a lot of material to help you communicate water efficiency. And finally, our last poll question. Hopefully you are finding these webinars to be beneficial. We'd like your input on potential topics for future webinars. What webinar topics are you interested in for the future? Efficient irrigation alternatives, quantifying water savings from efficient nozzles, roadblocks to effective irrigation, using touch technology to track high water users, and working with community groups to transform landscapes. All right, so it looks here like we've got a good distribution between efficient irrigation alternatives as well as working with community groups to transform landscapes. All right. I'd like to thank everyone for their responses, and I'd like to thank Pamela and Marianne.
You're welcome. Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.